Tom Brady.
What is he Asian?
Hi everyone, welcome to another 7-9 media video. Today we have a special guest. His name is Pranav Iyer. Wave Pranav, wave.
Hello.
Yes, so if you guys don't know, he is the editor-in-chief, the founder of AMAZN, which is an Asian American athletics journal slash like media company, and he's doing really amazing things in California and really highlighting people and Asian American athletes. So do you want to share a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, sure. My name is Pranav. I kind of like my inspiration for kind of starting this was I'm obviously I'm an Indian American. I grew up playing on football, and myself and so many others we keep on like hearing these things, whether it be from our culture, whether it be from our community, or whether it be from society at large, that we can't succeed in sports and there's no point in us trying to pursue it because whether it be the lack of representation, things like that. So I luckily had the opportunity to play college football, and I realized a lot of things during that process, especially growing into my Asian American identity and Indian American identity, and actually embracing that rather than kind of shying away from that. And I kind of realized like there should be a platform that kind of spotlights a lot of these Asian American athletes, because I guess through my process, I always try to kind of discover a lot of these athletes to get inspiration for myself. But I think there are so many examples of success that just go under the rug, and those are the types of examples that can really inspire that next generation. So I thought like there was something like this when I was growing up, it would have made a huge difference in my life. So that's kind of why I started it.
Oh, we love that. We love that representation here at 7-9 Media. And speaking of representation and Asianness, we all decided to get some foods from our local businesses. I put mine in a bowl. So does everyone want to show off a little bit what they got? Yes, let's share. Oh, look how big this Thai tea is. It's as big as my head. So mine is from Thai Coyote or Thai Choyo. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's in Tustin / Santa Ana area. Super good. It's my first time getting it, and I'm already in love.
So I got a sake don from Yoki Sushi in Fremont, up here in the Bay Area. And it's been my go-to place for sushi, for sake dons. But yeah.
Incredible.
Wait, you live in Fremont? That's so cool. I also have a Fremont in Washington.
Oh, really?
Nobody cares, but it's fine. So I also went to an old favorite of mine. I'm in Seattle, so different state. It's called Chia Noodles. They do hand-ripped noodles. Every time I come home for break, when I was at Chapman, I would always come here at least once or twice. And now I'm home for a bit, so I was like, gotta represent my favorite noodle place.
Then I went to Pho 10 and I got my banh mi and my milk tea. It's in Huntington Beach. It's not my like go-to like banh mi place. That's the place next door to my church. But like honestly, it's a name of Vietnamese that I don't know how to pronounce, and I don't think they're on any like apps or anything. So this is like a nice, more like local to me place. But yeah.
Oh, I also went to Sip House. They do great Vietnamese coffee.
Awesome. Well, just to kind of start off our time, we're gonna have a little chat because Pranav's our good friend and we want to chat with Pranav. And so, but first, what we're gonna do, Pranav has been really kind to us, or maybe not so kind because he made a quiz for us, because we don't know a lot about sports, but Pranav knows a lot about sports. And so he's here to educate us as well as all of you for, to like see what's happening in the sports area. So Pranav, whenever you're ready, take it away. We're gonna do like a 10-second thing. So you're gonna ask the question, I'm gonna start the timer, and then all of us have to try to figure out what the answer is.
I'm not ready.
No one is ever ready.
To start off easy, which Asian American tennis player is currently ranked number 2 in the world? Women's tennis. You definitely know the name. One of you definitely knows the name.
Oh gosh.
Isn't it Naomi?
Oh, Naomi Osaka.
Osaka?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'm proud. I got one.
This one should also be pretty easy, but you just have to put a little bit of thought to it. So in the context of like greatest American athletes of all time. Which Asian American athlete is in this conversation?
Tiger Woods.
Yes.
Is it Tiger Woods?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. I thought it was Jeremy Lin.
I wish. Okay, now it's gonna get a little bit harder. So this is going back into history. So in the same year that Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier, 1947, in the MLB, what happened parallelly in the NBA?
I'm assuming an Asian person.
So in 1947, Japanese American Wataru Misaka, he broke the NBA's color barrier. So he was the first person of color to ever play in the league. He only played for, I think, it was 1 or 2 seasons, and there was a lot of talks that it could have been it could have been like racially motivated, that he was like pushed out of the league. But, the 2021 Olympics this year, which U.S. sports teams, like team sport, will feature 7 AAPI athletes?
Soccer?
It's men's volleyball.
Volleyball.
I forgot we have volleyball.
It was figure skating, but then I was like, that's not a team.
Yeah, skating is the first thing that came to my mind too.
Yeah, and then
I was like, I know the Asian skaters. Like,
Golfing?
So now it's football. This quarterback was the first Asian American #1 overall draft pick in NFL history in 2018. I think it's 2018.
Tom Brady.
what is he Asian?
The only footballer I know.
It's Kyler Murray. He is 1/4 Korean, but he reps it pretty well. He also won Rookie of the Year that same year, and he's like one of the most like notable quarterbacks in the league right now.
Googling him right now.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. This question you kind of already touched upon. Which U.S. Olympic sport that has boasted gold medalists Michelle Kwan and Christy Yamaguchi featured a 50% Asian American team this past Olympics?
Figure skating.
Yeah, and a little more context on that. It's like we know the names Christy Yamaguchi and Michelle Kwan, but before that, Christy's inspiration was this girl named Tiffany Ching, who like no one really knows about her, but she back in like the 1980s, she was like known to be like the future of U.S. figure skating. And this was like at a time when there was like no Asian American or very little Asian American representation in that sport, which is very different than now. And like she was like nicknamed things like China doll by an announcer, and she was like told that like you're really good. This is like what she was told. You're really good, but you know you'll never be a champion. Figure skating champions have blonde hair and blue eyes, and you don't have either. So it's like, she obviously had to go through a lot of these blocks that to allow people like Christy and Michelle Kwan to kind of have that success, and that we're seeing now. Next, so back to NBA. Who became the first woman to sit on a bench during an NBA game as a coach? She is with the Los Angeles Clippers.
I have no idea.
I don't know the name though.
Her name is Natalie Nakase. She used to be like a star at UCLA, and then had like an overseas career for a little bit. She's like only 5'2", but she's now coaching like people who like she like gets like respect from like all the players that she's coached. I got to interview her like a couple years ago, and she's doing a lot for the community. This one you should know, or you should have at least heard of. Which Asian American became the first female to become an MLB general manager this year?
Yeah. Wait. I can see the article, poster, photo.
I know her face.
Yeah.
I'm so upset.
Is her name with a K?
Yeah, it's Kim Ong.
I'm a visual learner.
This one I'll just tell you the answer because there's no way you're gonna guess this one. But this year, 2 Indian American coaches broke barriers in both the NFL and the NBA. So in the NBA, Sonia Raman, former MIT women's head coach, she became the first Indian American woman coach. in the NBA, and she's with the Grizzlies currently. And then in the NFL, Sean Desai, he became the first Indian American defense coordinator when he took the job as the Bears defense coordinator. Two more. Okay. The Japanese American community in Los Angeles and San Francisco were some of the most tight-knit ethnic communities in the country at one point, but today, largely through like migration, gentrification, and generational changes, a lot of these communities have kind of dissolved to an extent, and Japanese American culture has started to get more marginalized. And I've spoken to community leaders, and kind of they all believe that there is like one key aspect of the culture that has stayed true and lived on. Like what is that aspect, and like what is that thing?
Into sports?
Say that again?
Wait, is this related?
Yeah, this is sports, yeah.
Love for baseball?
Baseball, yeah.
Well, I mean, could be, but it's mostly like the Japanese American basketball leagues that really started like pre-internment camp, and it was a way for like, because obviously they weren't allowed to play in a lot of these like normal recreational leagues and things like that. So it has been a way for like the community to kind of like grow together, and that's kind of like one of the ways that some of these traditional values of Japanese American culture is still passed on. Last question. Yesterday, who became the first Asian American to win an NBA regular season award? Posted about it yesterday on AMAZN.
Wow. There's so much shade for this one. Can I use my phone?
Sure.
Cheating. No, what?
Is this NBA, you said?
Yeah.
I can literally see the post in my head.
Well, it's Jordan Clarkson. He plays for the Utah Jazz, and he's a Filipino American. He won Sixth Man of the Year last year. I mean this season. And first, there's like six annual awards every year that are like regular season awards, and he's the first Asian American to win any of those awards. And that is the end of the quiz.
Yay, quiz.
Thanks, Pranav.
Yep.
Okay, my half a brain cell hurts now. I have not done a quiz in a long minute.
Okay, now we eat.
So like, how would you compare, kind of going off like your last question, like how would you compare, because awards are both big in sports and like entertainment, like movies and film, like everyone looks towards like award season. Oscars worldwide are known like for being such this big thing. Do you think like sports and awards are like kind of similar, Olympics aside? Like, does it really help with like recognition and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I don't think like to that extent it's as important, because for a lot of these, I mean, like what we're talking about team sports, right? And in that context, we're talking about individual sports. So for most of these athletes, that's never the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to win, like whether it be an NBA championship, a Super Bowl or something, rather than winning league MVP. So there's that kind of, I guess, distinction a little bit. And there's also the fact that these awards are chosen by like sports writers or like things like that. So there's that sort of bias, or like there's controversy every year, as I'm sure it is the same with like Oscars and things like that. But yeah, it's definitely a big thing.
Like controversy over like who's actually giving the awards out?
I mean, like more so, it's like why does this person deserve it over this? It's like maybe like this person like had a really good season, but like their team like didn't perform, and so it's like, I guess, what do you value, individual or team accolades, and like how does that influence like who actually is the most valuable player rather than who is like the most statistically dominant, things like that.
Well, I guess another question too, like in considering awards and stuff like that, I feel for like entertainment and like movies and stuff, that's super objective or subjective, but I feel like with sports it's a little bit more objective in the sense that like you can see how a person had performed based on like their like literal score. So I don't know, does that like factor into like who gets awards and stuff like that, or like how have you seen, I guess, bias like in that area?
I mean, I think it's objective in terms where it's like in film, like you can't compare really a film to another film because there's not really a common ground, versus like in basketball, it's like two like MVP candidates are gonna play against each other and stuff. So there's like the actual common ground, but still, it's like that distinction between like you can track things through stats, but stats don't always like tell the big story. It's like maybe this guy will be like score like the most points in the league and have the most assists in the league, but that doesn't translate into victories or like whatever.
Do you feel like for representation, like awards mean more, I guess, if that makes sense? Like, again, like movies are talking about, oh, like the first Latinx woman to win this category, and like it's a big deal
Yeah.
because of their ethnic identity. Do you feel like that's the same for like sports, even though awards aren't like the end all be all?
I think like the reason why awards are important, it's not because like say like we all knew like Minari was like a great movie. We all knew like these actors are great actors. As Asian Americans, like we know that. I think though awards is like, whether it be for the better or worse, it like gives us that validation that yes, society believes this too now. It's not just our own community believing this. So that's why I think it's important. Like that's not necessarily like the best reason, because I don't think that these awards are always indicative of like what society believes, but that's like what we're trained to believe. So I think in that sense, that's why there's such a value to it.
I mean, that's super interesting to think about because, you know, like I'm a psychology major, or I was a psychology major. And so I think a lot about like biases, and I think a lot about like how, like, why do we as a society put so much value in like a piece of metal, or just like, you know what I mean? Or just like something like, what does that say about our ideology as a society that we put so much value on like collective agreement that this person is great, and so we're going to award them with something? Is just really interesting. But like for better for worse, that is like how our society works, and that is how we like, I guess, assign worth in some areas. And so it's been super cool in the past couple of years to see my more minority groups getting that recognition as like in a more mainstream way, I think, because I feel like very like niche people know like things about their own niches, and then we can like see this is amazing like in our thing. And I really like what you were saying about how like it's a more like mainstream, or like more validation, I guess, in like a bigger scope, even though that's not necessarily like, I don't know, that's like not where we necessarily like where we should be putting our like worth. I don't know. Yeah, really interesting conversation to think about.
I feel like in this moment, because we're still so like award oriented, like it means a lot. But then I think in that there's also that hope to push that like towards a place where awards aren't the end all be all, but right now that is where we're at, so it does mean a lot. And I think I've appreciated like more people who have gotten awards taking advantage of the platform that they have, and like not acknowledging that like it's not the end all be all, but also the privilege it is to be in that place and to use it to the best of their ability, not just to try to like shun the spotlight when you can also use that, you know, on the flip side too. So
yeah, because also like when you kind of get to that stage, it's like then like I mean it's like almost like guaranteed that more opportunities are coming for either you or for like people like you. Even if we like as an Asian American community like really value like a film or like whatever, or an athlete, it's like only like when it is accepted by like the greater society that you can really see that flow of the next people to come. Because apart from that, it's like it's like you reach that ceiling, right? And the audience too, it's like your audience is only going to be in the Asian American community and things like that.
I think that brings up an interesting point, because I remember talking to someone about Crazy Rich Asians, and their other friend was like, oh, like I didn't see myself in that movie, and she straight up said, it's not about you. And it was like, and so I think just like there's an interesting moment of part about like the awards and being accepted in society. It's like that means you've reached a point where people are still equally engaged even when they don't have someone who looks like them on screen. Like if you are the majority and you're still like equally engaged and like being able to see yourself on screen, but also being equally invested in someone else's story who doesn't look like you. Obviously, like right now we're at a point where like we still need like so much representation for ethnic minorities, but like just like that larger conversation of like what it means to be accepted by society.
Yeah, because it's
And
like, still hard. It's still hard for like
yeah.
probably people from even our own community, but obviously even more so from like just mainstream American society. It's like when you see an Asian American story. I mean, obviously Crazy Rich Asians is not an Asian American story, but like when you see an Asian American story, like you still don't see it as an American story. Even to an extent, we believe that, like because that's what we were taught, that like, oh, like we are like this other, you know. So I think that is kind of what needs to be knocked down. Yeah, like when we see like a white American story, a Black American story, even like a Latino American story, like we oftentimes we'll associate that with the American story, but it's very rare that we associate that with the Asian American story.
But yeah, like that whole thing that you're talking about, Pranav, like it makes me think of like how Minari for like the Golden Globes was like nominated in like the best foreign language like section, and that caused such an uproar because like there is still like this kind of prevalence of seeing like Asian or Asian American stories as still being other,
Yeah.
even though it's very much a story about America. So yeah, it's definitely still like a continuing issue, but I think it was nice to see like the backlash, to see that there were people who were like standing up and saying like that's not okay. So it's definitely a step in the right direction. Although, I mean, the Golden Globes has like their whole huge issues, so that's like a whole other thing. But
There's more tea in that boat for sure. This is going on another tangent, but it's interesting to talk about all that we do now. But like Pranav, what would you say you're like a knowledge or awareness of all of this when you were in high school or like middle school when you first started doing sports?
Knowledge of what?
Just like representation, or is that something you were aware of? Or lack of representation, or was it even on your mind? Was it just like focusing on what was ever happening on like the court, or like
Yeah.
anything?
Yeah, I mean, like in terms of sports, yeah, I think that was something that I didn't have a choice for it to be on my mind or not. Like it was like ingrained in me because I was always told that like the skinny Indian kid, why am I doing this? No one else is doing it. So like, what's the purpose in it? Because obviously, like I had like dreams of going to the NFL like when I was like in third grade, and it's like fine to have those type of dreams when you're that young because obviously everyone does. But if those dreams kind of like stick with you as you progress through like the years, it's like I mean, like especially like within our community, like they think like, yeah, something's wrong with you. But yeah, I always looked for like representation because like I mean, obviously it's the most like tangible way of seeing that it is possible. And so I always used to do my research, like were there any other Asian American quarterbacks like in the NFL? Were there like any Indian players play in the NFL? Um, one guy that like really like one of the dudes, like one of the only examples is this guy named Timmy Chang. He played for the University of Hawaii, and then he kind of like bounced around in the NFL for a little bit. But I actually got to like talk to him like earlier this year and like interview him. And his story is like super interesting because like growing up in Hawaii, he never had to like, I guess, live that same reality that I did because he, as an Asian American, he was part of the majority, and even in the football population, there was a lot of representation in that sense where he was from, and so he didn't have to be like seen as an Asian American until he kind of got to the NFL, and that's kind of when he started to realize that. But yeah, I always looked for it, and like one dude who like especially I think probably is my biggest inspiration to this day, um, apart from Jeremy Lin, who like obviously like that's my dude. But this guy named Varun Ram, he like my cousin actually like told me about him when I was in ninth grade. He's like family friends with my cousin's family, and he was this 5'9" dude who ended up like he had like the craziest journey from not getting any college looks to going to like prep school to going to Division 3 to enrolling at Maryland, not even knowing he would have the opportunity to walk on, to eventually walking on to getting a scholarship, and then becoming like the hero of March Madness, like for Maryland. This 5'9" Indian kid who's like 150 pounds. And his story was like one that really like resonated with me. Like it felt like my story the exact same way. And I got the chance to like talk to him like when I was a junior in high school and really like tell him how about my journey and things like that, and he gave me a lot of advice, and he's someone that still kind of I still talk to this day. But he's like he was like that one dude for sure that like was like obviously different sports, um like almost like the same story. And yeah, so I always look for that representation for sure.
That's so good, cool that you got to actually talk to all these people. Like, you
Yeah.
still get to talk to all these people.
Yeah. Well, I think like I could probably speak for everyone. We're super inspired by how you have this like vision of what you like wanted to do, or and then it like became a reality. And the fact that you're like super like gung-ho about it and like diving really deep into it is like something that I think we all definitely like admire about like your drive and like your passion for what you do. And so I just want to say like that's amazing. um, I don't know if we've like, expressed that to you enough because like we're friends, but like, just want to let you know that it's really awesome. But I just also wanted to ask like what do you see for like the future of your publication or your journal? Like how
Yeah.
are you wanting to see it like progress, and what are your kind of goals for the next, I don't know, like couple of years?
I think the biggest thing is like I know that something like this should have been created years ago, because there is that community for that. And I think like through what I've been doing like this past year and few months, like I've realized that yeah, that like this community is so large, it's just not brought together. You know what I mean? Like there's no, obviously there's some different organizations that have kind of like allowed for like the Asian American sporting community to kind of come together in some senses, but from an overall perspective, there really hasn't been anything like that. So I think my biggest goal is to kind of like, yeah, like do what I'm doing at a local scale, kind of like what I'm doing here in like Southern California and in the Bay Area, and kind of spread that to a national reach. And obviously there's so many huge pockets of like Asian American communities and Asian American sporting talent across the country. And I think like my ultimate goal is to like get it to that level where it can be like wide as wide reaching as that. Um, because like my ultimate goal with this is like not for it to just be like a media outlet, but for it to be an actual way to kind of like create tangible change within like the Asian American community and how like society perceives the community. Because obviously, like yeah, media representation will definitely help in that in terms of like all just seeing these athletes like in media, and progressing that narrative and showing that like yeah, you can be this like this Chinese dude or this Indian dude or this Vietnamese dude and like be dunking on people. That's still such a like a not a reality in terms of just like seeing that. So there's always that shock factor. So like as you continue to keep on like shocking society through like just telling these stories and showing these highlights and things like that, the goal is to like get it to a point where it's not no longer like that. And yeah, it's like creating a movement, and creating like also like I think it's cool that like there's been like college coaches and stuff that have started reaching out to me and like being able to kind of like I don't know be a platform for that in that sense as well, because like I always say this, like no matter how good you are as like an Asian American athlete, no matter how much determination you have to kind of overcome a lot of these obstacles that are in front of you and overcome that discrimination, when it comes to sports, you can only go so far by yourself, because it's the higher ups, the organizations that really dictate whether you get the opportunity or not. And without that, it's like you kind of get stymied. So like that is also like what needs to change, and hopefully like one day like having like an influence in that aspect would also be super dope.
Both sports and entertainment have their gatekeepers that are even beyond the players or beyond the actors and actresses.
Mhm.
Uh,
I think entertainment is probably like so much more.
I think I think it's pretty. I mean, I guess for entertainment, I feel like it would be pretty similar though, honestly, like because there's always so much negotiation and there's always so much like money on the line, and like you want to go with safe bets and things like that, and
Yeah.
both for casting and for drafting, like you kind of touched on this a little bit, but like yeah, I guess like what's media's role in like feeding the perceptions or like breaking down those perceptions of Asian Americans in sports?
I mean, I think it's like the biggest thing right now in terms of like how it's influenced our perceptions as a society in terms of how we view things. But I think media is a result of like society, so it kind of like amplifies it. So like these messages that are getting portrayed on like more local scales, media has the ability to kind of amplify that, whether it be for the positive or the negative. With like media in the past, it's like media has been controlled by like the majority population, right? So it's the voice of that rather than the voice of everyone else, and that has become like the voice of society. So I think that's kind of like a big reason why like why you see so little representation and things like that, and why like these stereotypes and things exist, and how we don't have the ability to rewrite that narrative until kind of like now where we're kind of getting more power and things like that. um but but yeah, at the same time, like yeah, like we're seeing now that media has this ability to kind of be that change, whether it be like in film, like whether it be like through like I don't know, Asian Americans putting on their own people, and like you see like through Wong Fu production and stuff like that, what you saw through like Crazy Rich Asians, and yeah, like what you're seeing like through like Gold House, things like that. And kind of like whether it be like in the positive light or also shedding like light to like bad things, like what we see with all the Asian hate crimes, what we're seeing with like things like that, and amplifying those stories so they're actually heard and not just dismissed. So I think we're seeing it now better, more for the positive, um, but definitely a long ways to go.
I guess also kind of another question that I have is like, how do we like application, you know, like how do we practically like help support these Asian American athletes or like the cause that you guys are doing? I think an example that I can think of in the more like movie like media realm is the Gold Open that Kate puts on, the Coalition of Asian Pacifics in Entertainment, like, and how they like buy out movie theaters and stuff for like Asian American films or like Asian American created films and stuff like that. I know they're doing it for In the Heights because John M. Chu is directing that, and then they're doing like a collab situation. I'm like really excited. Is there like a way that us as consumers or just like people who are passionate about Asian representation in general, specifically Asian American representation, how can we support these athletes, or is there something similar that we can do?
I mean, I think it's definitely less tangible because like when it comes to films, it's I mean a lot of times it's like how many people watch the movie, how many people, what are the viewings, what are the ratings, things like that. Versus with the athletes, it's a very different type of metric, I guess. But I think one way that's like big that is like obviously like once you hear about these athletes, like supporting the journeys, because like for now, like a lot of them are kind of on their own, are some of the only on their path, and they're facing a lot of obstacles, but like knowing that they have the support from the community is a huge thing. Like I know like how I was saying, like Natalie Nakase was at UCLA, like back then, like the entire like Japanese American community in Los Angeles used to come out to her games and like support her. And like one of these girls was this girl named Allison Taka. When she was like a kid, playing like Japanese American basketball, she used to come with her team and watch Natalie. And then fast forward like a decade later, she ended up playing at UCLA, and she used to see and she saw like kind of like herself, like these kids watching her play, and the community coming out to watch her. And you fast forward 10 years to now we have Natalie Chou, like the most successful like Asian American high school player of all time, like only player to make the USA team. She's now at UCLA, and she had the ability to kind of like inspire this next generation of Asian American athletes. So I think it's a lot of like, yeah, like supporting your own, keep like educating people, keep like, I don't know, like I think when it comes to a lot of this, it's all about like keeping an open mind and not judging a book by its cover, which is one of the biggest barriers for a lot of our athletes. Another thing is obviously like there's a lot of it within our culture that like whether it be like you guys with your own families or you guys like with your friends and stuff, it's like a lot of times like when the difference between like sports in Asia and sports in America are very different, where just like the understandings are different, where it's like if you want to pursue sports in Asia, for a large part, like you're kind of funneled into a path when you're very young, so there's no like coexistence of academics and athletics, and that's why for a large part we don't see that we see that kind of discouraged here within the Asian American community. So I mean, it's a lot of just like, I guess, yeah, educating, yeah, like your peers, also educating like your family and your community and things like that, and showing them these examples is like, yeah, like you can see him doing it on the big screen. It's a big thing.
I know this may sound cliche, but like Renaud, like thinking back to like when you were younger and thinking about representation, like what would you tell any like aspiring young like Asian American athlete now, like whether it's like elementary, middle school, high school, or like even college, I guess, like what would your encouragement or even challenge like be to them?
I think it's a little bit different because like you now see like significantly more representation, and in these next few years we're gonna see a lot more. Yeah, like showing them these examples of success are like the biggest things, because a lot of times these examples aren't very well known, because our stories are still not being told very well or like thoroughly. So it's like unless they do their own deep dive and deep searching, they're not gonna find these examples. So I think that would be like one big thing. Obviously, like still these athletes are going to be like experiencing discrimination, and it's just like the normalization of Asian discrimination in our society, and that I think you especially see that in sports. So I think like being able to overcome that and just realizing that, yeah, like you're not the only one who is experiencing this. There's millions of people around the country who are experiencing the same exact thing and are in the same exact position as you. It's obviously not fair that we as a community in terms of sports have to overcome a lot of these obstacles that not other communities don't have to face, but it's a reality, and kind of like, I guess, like the impact that you can have if you do make it to the higher levels, and kind of like seeing success from there. But yeah, I think like the biggest thing for me is like I always saw like so many of my peers like growing up that I had the same exact passions as I did, probably had more talent than I did. They just, by the time they got to a certain age level, they were like, yeah, this isn't for me. Like, I don't see anyone else doing it. My family, like, they don't understand this. Like, this is my passion, but like there's no point in pursuing it at this point. I think that's like the saddest thing that I've seen, like growing up, and it's still like obviously super prevalent within our community. And I think being able to kind of like just change that part of the experience will like create for so much representation. And because like obviously there's so much talent within the community, we need that infrastructure and support system to kind of help propel that.
Well, thanks so much, Pranav, for joining us on this fun little conversation. Those are some really great like action steps and things to think about as we continue this journey on what it means to be an Asian American in sports, in entertainment and stuff like that. And so we really appreciate your time. Just really quickly, where can we find you? Like, plug everything, and I'll link it in the description below.
Yeah, so on Instagram and TikTok, it's at AMAZNHQ.
When were you on TikTok?
I'm not aware of this.
Website is AMAZNHQ.com, and on YouTube it's AMAZNHQ, the home of Asian American sports.
We're all wearing a sweater. So you can't how to spell it.
Wait, are you gonna drop any more like apparel anytime soon? By chance?
Well, I need to. That's like a whole process, but and everyone's been asking. But I hope so. Like in the future, like I hope to like re-release the hoodies as well, and also like other merch too.
I will be on the pre-order list. Yeah. Also a bit of a shopaholic, but I love this sweatshirt. It's literally my favorite thing.
Yeah.
Wait, also the back though.
Yes.
Oh yeah, the back.
That's my favorite.
Well, everyone give Pranav a round of applause. Yay, we love Pranav. So if you haven't already, like and subscribe. We're gonna link all of Pranav's information down below. Please give him a call. He's doing some really incredible work, and we're all very, very proud of him. And so yeah, thanks for watching. We'll see you again in a couple of weeks. And yeah,
Subscribe to 79 Media.
subscribe to 79 Media.